Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. With growing concern about the future of Kulbhushan Yadav at the top of everyone's mind, we ask tonight, what steps can the Indian government take to help or save him? Are there bilateral measures? Can we organize international support? And finally, can we use the power of public opinion? My guests are former Foreign Secretary Kanwal Sibal, former Additional Secretary in RNAW Jaydev Ranade, former BJP MP and the editor of Pioneer Chandan Mitra, Congress spokesperson Jaiveer Shergill, and Pakistan's former High Commissioner to India, Aziz Ahmed Khan. Aziz Ahmed Khan, let me start with a simple question. Do you believe Pakistan will implement the death sentence a field general court-martial has awarded Kulbhushan Yadav? Even if your countrymen are convinced he's a spy, surely in the 21st century, civilized countries don't kill spies.
Well, a judgment has been given, and that is what we should keep under consideration. What happens next? There are still recourse left for an appeal, for clemency to the president, and other probably diplomatic channels to talk about. So far as it appears, once a judgment is given, it should be carried out. But at the same time, there have been instances where then appeals have been considered. I mean, we have the case of two other spies like this who were caught in Pakistan, the Kashmir Singh and Surjit Singh, and they were sentenced to death, but they appealed for clemency, and then their sentence was turned into life imprisonment, and ultimately they were released out of humanitarian considerations. And in case of Surjit Singh, a lot of row was created that he was innocent and so on, and the moment he crossed the Wagah border, Atari border, he immediately declared that yes, he had gone there for sabotage and spy activities and so on, and boasted about that. Okay. But that's besides the point. At the moment, there are avenues still open where further action can be taken and consideration given.
Chandan Mitra, let's explore how credible those avenues that are opened are likely to be. As you heard Aziz Ahmed Khan say, there are at least 3 stages of appeal that Kulbhushan Yadav can avail of. First, either to a High Court or a Supreme Court, but it's not clear which. Secondly, the Army Chief, and finally to the President of Pakistan himself. Now, Pakistan does have a very independent Supreme Court that has removed 2 Prime Ministers from office. Does the appeal process in Pakistan, in your eyes, hold out a credible hope for Mr. Yadav, or is that unlikely in the case of an Indian who Pakistan deems to be a spy?
Well, I would be always a little wary of entirely trusting the Pakistani judicial system when it comes to India, and that too to somebody whom the Pakistan government insists is a spy, although there is no evidence to the effect. So, however, since Pakistan government has deemed him to be a spy, it will be difficult, I believe, for a Pakistani court to kind of acquit him. Reducing the sentence, okay, possible that the sentence can be reduced from execution to life, but really, I think India needs to go out of its way, as External Affairs Minister has said, to try and save Mr. Yadav from the gallows and bring him back, because he really was not indulging in any anti-Pakistan activity. According to our government sources and credible sources, he was kidnapped from Iran and brought into Balochistan, and then it was claimed that he was spying and creating trouble.
Jaiveer Shergill, the suggestion that the Pakistan Supreme Court must be moved with the best possible lawyers came in fact from Ghulam Nabi Azad, a member of your party and the leader of the opposition in the Rajya Sabha. What gives Mr. Azad the confidence that Pakistan's best lawyers will defend a man their country considers a spy and, to be honest, considers a terrorist? In reverse circumstances, many Indian lawyers would refuse to defend a Pakistani on those grounds. What makes Mr. Azad confident that won't be the case in Pakistan the other way around?
I think firstly we require a bit of a clarification on the appeal aspect as such. From the military court, the appeal lies with the military chief and not to the judicial court. So the first...
Well, but forgive me, Khwaja Asif, that defense minister speaking to the Pakistani Senate, did make it clear that there is an appeal to the Supreme Court. Your leader of the opposition has made it clear. Sushma Swaraj has made it clear. All three have accepted.
Yes, after it goes from the army chief.
Never mind.
Yes.
At the Supreme Court stage, what makes Mr. Azad confident that Pakistan's lawyers will be willing to defend an Indian?
No, I think there have been past instances where a lot of people involved with the Human Rights Watch have taken up cases of other nationalities in Pakistan.
But isn't it different when it's an Indian accused of spying and terror? After all, how many lawyers in India would defend a Pakistani accused of spying and terror? Doesn't the opposite obtain as well?
Of course, it is. It will be a Herculean task, but we have to be optimistic at this stage. But what other options do we have? Now, we all know Pakistan is thick-skinned. They are immune to verbal diplomatic condemnation. Our massive public outcry, coupled with fire and brimstone statements, will not get him back. We need a proactive three-pronged approach. Number one, get him a retrial with a fair procedure. Second, use our international pressure on them, a cold blast of economic and political isolation. Third, if we have past precedents. In 2011, Raymond Davis, a CIA agent, was released. Now we have the USA NSA representative HR McMaster coming next week.
You're forgetting something. $2 million was paid as blood money.
Yes.
Right? That's a very important thing.
Yes.
And secondly, you're forgetting India's leverage is not the same as that of Washington. But nonetheless, let's move away, Kanwal Sibal, from the likelihood of the appeal processes relieving and saving Kulbhushan Yadav to the second key question. Do we have bilateral leverage with Pakistan to persuade them not to carry out the death sentence? Would withdrawing high commissioners or reducing mission staff in Islamabad be helpful, or would it be pointless?
Well, we don't have many bilateral leverages, because if we had effective leverages, we would have dealt with the question of Pakistani-sponsored terrorism long ago. And despite the fact of Mumbai, Pathankot, Uri, Nagrota and everything else, that issue has not been resolved by us through bilateral dialogue. So I don't think that we can persuade them to do so in the case of Kulbhushan Yadav. Insofar as what you have mentioned about diplomatic steps, those can be taken, but in due course, because if you immediately expel the Pakistan ambassador and call back your ambassador or reduce the size of the missions, then your capacity to have a dialogue with them with whatever result or efficiency would be compromised. So one might actually need representation there where there can be a continuing dialogue with the Pakistani authorities. But if they don't relent, and if they go down the road and we find that the situation is becoming, from our point of view, more and more difficult to handle, and Pakistan seems determined to execute him, then yes, I think Sushma Swaraj has threatened consequences, and the first step that would need to be taken is to perhaps do what you are saying, but more than that. But let me add one point. You know, when spies are arrested like this, they are exchanged. They are not executed. So I can't understand the Pakistani motives
can I stop
in going ahead.
We'll come to the exchange in a moment's time, Mr. Sibal. Let's take this step by step.
Okay.
There is a possibility of an exchange, but let's take it step by step. When we consider things that we can do as bilateral leverage that we can exercise in Pakistan, do you think, Mr. Ranade, it would be wise for India to cut back on visas, to cut back on bus and rail traffic between the two countries, not just at Atari Wagah, but also across the Kashmir LOC? Or would that only hurt individual citizens with relatives on either side and not really change the attitude and responses of the Pakistani administration?
I think it has to be a step-by-step approach. Firstly, till such time as we get Jadhav back, we must keep our diplomatic channels open, because that is how we are going to be able to talk to them. That is how we are going to be able to assemble the lawyers, team of lawyers whom I think we should be putting together to take the matter up in the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Second, if I may just digress a bit, according to the section under which he was tried, article and section under which he was tried, apparently the Pakistani authorities don't have to show that he actually did anything against Pakistan. It just suspicion is more than enough. That's what one of the experts there is
Can
saying.
I just interrupt and say that that is as a result of a constitutional amendment passed by Pakistan
Yes.
in December 2014, upheld by the Supreme Court last year, and it applies to everyone. The vast majority of people who are tried under that are Pakistanis.
Correct.
It's not special for India.
No,
I'm just
correct.
clarifying that.
All that I'm trying to say is when we assemble the team of lawyers, whatever it is, this will need to be explored. But the third point is, I think we should, across the board, cut ties with Pakistan in the sense of exchange of traffic, exchange of people, particularly in areas where there is an economic cost for Pakistan.
Aziz Ahmed Khan, let me bring up that possibility and see how you as a former High Commissioner to India respond. How would Pakistan respond if India were to cut back on visas? I believe more visas are issued to Pakistanis to come to India than to Indians to go to Pakistan. Secondly, how would Pakistan respond if train and bus traffic were reduced or halted completely? How would you respond to trade sanctions, particularly across the LOC, or the revoking of most favored nation status? How would those measures be taken in Pakistan?
Number one, you are punishing ordinary people who have divided families, because that is where all the travel is restricted to, and they will suffer unnecessarily. But we have been there in the past. There have been times when the traffic has been very, very low. As far as the issuance of visas is concerned, I think both Pakistan and India give about equal number of visas to each other's citizens. I don't know exactly what is the situation today, but when I was there, the number of visas issued by either side was about the same. And it was basically restricted to the divided families and people who go for religious pilgrimages, etc., which happens under an agreed regime. As far as the MFN trade ties and MFN status is concerned, if you stop that, actually it is India which is benefiting from that trade and not Pakistan that much. Indian exports to Pakistan are 70% of the trade, and Pakistan's are in fact less than 30%. So you would be hurting your own economic interests. As far as MFN status is concerned, it doesn't help Pakistan very much because of your non-tariff and para-tariff barriers. In any case, it makes the trade Pakistani exports very difficult to India. Okay. So all these measures are just going to be a futile exercise as far as I can see.
Chandran Mitra, let's come to steps that we can take to encourage third countries, and I here mean particularly Western countries, to put pressure on Pakistan. Should we start by making them aware that Yadav did not have a fair trial with due process? That not only was it a rushed trial, as the Indian Express has said, but in addition, evidence was missing, and much more importantly, he probably didn't have effective legal help. He may have had some form of nominal legal help, but not reliable and effective. Do you think we need to make that case in Western capitals to make sure that countries with large human interest concerns start to weigh in on our favor?
Well, I think you are entirely right, and I think these points need to be highlighted by our diplomatic staff in missions in the West, especially those countries which have already abolished the death penalty. We haven't, but you see, this is a case where, I mean, it's really a case of give a dog a bad name and hang him. This is being practiced without any fair trial, without evidence having been produced, and I think that not just the human rights groups, Western governments which are concerned about Pakistan's human rights record in Balochistan and other places would be impressed by this logic and will bring sufficient economic and strategic pressure on Pakistan to deal with Yadav in a civilized manner, which is either to exchange him for Pakistani spies in India, or at least immediately suspend his death sentence and commute it to life imprisonment.
Let me, J.V. Shergill, put to you the problem with this suggestion I put a moment ago to Chandran Mitra. And it's very simple, but it's a rather telling one. Many Western countries will undoubtedly agree that Mr. Yadav has not had a proper trial. But they will also be aware of the fact that the Indian Express published this morning that between 2010 and 2012, Mr. Yadav made 3 separate attempts to join RNAW. They will also be aware that a former head of RNAW, A.S. Dullat, said on this very program yesterday that Mr. Yadav could well be a spy. And secondly, that Mr. Dullat has serious issues concerning the multiple passports and false names that Mr. Yadav has used. Clearly, as Mr. Dullat said, there's more to this than meets the eye. So in those circumstances, when they are aware of the doubts, will Western capitals, Western governments weigh in and try and influence Pakistan, or will they keep a hands off because they're not sure what this is about?
I think they will weigh in for the simple reason. The fact whether he was a spy or not does not deprive him from the due process of law. We have examples on our side, whether it was Ajmal Kasab and other people. We have 46 Pakistani spies. I think the number is now 53 on this side, which are being detained in India as per the media reports. Second, why are we forgetting Iran out of this equation? Iran is directly affected by the decision. An individual within their jurisdiction is kidnapped, taken away. Iran needs to realize if it can happen to an Indian in Iran, it can happen to an Iranian in Iran.
The only problem with that logic is that I don't believe India has registered any strong protest with Iran about the fact that an Indian was abducted from their country, was still an Indian working on the high-profile Chabahar boat that were helping them build. That strong protest has not been delivered, as far as I know, by the Indian side to Iran, because if they have delivered it, they've kept it hidden from their own countrymen.
There is of course, better late than never, but what is the objective of keeping it hidden? You know that when the president of Iran was there, Rahil Sharif took the issue up with him. The chairman of foreign policy, Mr. Alauddin, was specifically deputed, and Iran was evasive about him. But if Pakistan can openly discuss with Iran, why can't India discuss with Iran?
But the problem is that if actually these concerns that have been revealed about Yadav's connections to RAW or his multiple passports are also known to the Iranians may not like the fact he's abducted, but they may not believe he's innocent either. And the question I'm asking is, how likely are Western governments to come in on our side if they're aware of the doubts?
The doubts are subject to the verdict. Western nations know that upholding the rule of law is more important than guilting
in other words,
somebody. And I just want one statistic.
You're saying that the Western nations would be concerned primarily with the death sentence. That would only be Western countries.
And the process through which that sentence was given.
All right.
And I want to make one stat. Sorry, I'll just take 5 seconds. As per the report, disturbing reports, they have not adhered to the due process of law. Supreme Court of Pakistan is holding a petition from Balochistan. Thousands of people have detained, have not made it to the courts.
I have to interrupt you there because your facts are wrong. This was a case that was held under an established procedure as a result of a constitutional amendment in December 2014, upheld by the Supreme Court last year and extended by constitutional amendment again in December.
Right.
So, by the way, there are no doubts the Pakistan Supreme Court has on this issue. Let's not confuse our audience, because that's absolutely true. Kamal Simbal, there's another aspect that perhaps India could use. Today's Times of India quotes at length what a former German ambassador to Pakistan, Gunter Mulak, said at a seminar in Karachi last year. First, Mr. Mulak said that he had information that Yadav was kidnapped by the Taliban inside Iran and sold to Pakistan's ISI. Secondly, Mr. Mulak said that this had happened several years ago, but was only made public by the Pakistan military in March 2016 because they wanted to destroy the nascent peace process with India, and secondly, because they were upset that Nawaz Sharif had agreed to send a team to investigate the Pathankot attack. Can this account from a former German ambassador to Pakistan help us get German support and perhaps wider European Union support? Because after all, Germany hugely influences the European Union.
Look, Look, I mean, we should not clutch at straws like this, frankly. Number two, what you said earlier, this discussion on Iran, to my mind, is factually wrong, because a lot of tensions were created between Iran and Pakistan when General Rahil Sharif, in fact, protested to President Rouhani about allowing Indian spies to use Iran as a base for operations in India, in Pakistan, which General Rouhani not only, President Rouhani not only refuted, But in fact, a lot of tension was caused in the relations, and the Iranian were very unhappy. And the Iranian ambassador has made very strong statements on this issue. If you look at the reports emanating from that period. Number three.
Can I interrupt?
That,
it was the Iranian ambassador
we
in
have
Pakistan,
a difficult situation because
Mehdi Hunardost, who made strong statements. He claimed that in fact there's no way you can suggest Jadhav is an Indian spy.
Yes.
But the Iranian ambassador in India, who's a much more relevant one from
Yes.
our point of view, has been silent on the subject. And if either the present government or any previous government have got the Iranians to make public protests, they haven't been made in India.
No.
Yes,
Look,
forgive me. Yes.
No, look, it's not the Iranian ambassador's role here. It's not the Iranian ambassador's role in India to pronounce on something which happened in Pakistan when his own president and his own government and his own ambassador in Pakistan is making these statements. Why should he enter into this fray himself?
Come back.
That is not part of his jurisdiction.
Come back. Let's move away from this Iranian dispute. Come back to the point about Gunter Mulak, which is entirely a story that we would be happy to accept, that he was abducted
what I said is that,
and that he was sold to the ISI.
Yeah, but
can we build on that?
Yes. Look, as I said, if you want to clutch at straws like this to make out a case, it is pathetic. It will be pathetic on our part. We have to take some solid steps, and earlier what Jaidev Ranade said of some of the steps that can be taken should be taken. And let the Western countries, those who are concerned about India-Pakistan relations, then approach us, and then we make our views known. Because we shouldn't get into a situation where on the one hand we say we don't want external interference in our bilateral relations, and then go to them and intervene, asking them to intervene in this issue, and then they will raise the issue, but please have a dialogue. After all, dialogue is the only
Forgive me,
solution.
Mr. Sibil, I'm going to stop you because we're
trap.
very happy going
Take
to any
steps
Western
which
capital to
create
complain
concern.
about Pakistani terror. And that's a bilateral issue where actually we invite and encourage Western participation, involvement on our side. So it's strange that we would accept
not
that.
at all.
But
That's an international issue.
I'm stopping you because I'll come back to you, I promise, sir. I'm stopping you because I'm about to lose the satellite link.
What you are wrong.
I'm stopping you, sir, because I'm about to lose the satellite link to Pakistan. I want to make the most of the last 5 minutes I have with Aziz Ahmed Khan, and I will come back to you, Mr. Sibil. That's a promise. Aziz Ahmed Khan, I want you to respond to what Gunter Mulak, a former German ambassador in your country, you probably met him and know him, has said in your country again last year. He claimed that he had information that Jadhav was kidnapped by the Taliban from Iran and sold to Pakistan's ISI. And secondly, he also said that this had happened several years ago, but your army had chosen to go public only in March 2016, A, to scupper the nascent peace process, and B, because they were upset with Nawaz Sharif because Nawaz had agreed to send an investigative team to Pathankot. That story, as told by a former German ambassador, is precisely the line India believes is the truth.
Well, you may believe that. To me, that only appears a figment of his imagination and just a story and nothing more than that. As far as Pakistan is concerned, we have collected the evidence, and this evidence we have shared with the United Nations. We have the confessional statement of Yadav that he was in Pakistan. There were claims from the Indian side that he had strayed into Pakistan and territory. There was another story that he was probably chasing a girl and in love with some woman, and because of that he had entered Pakistan.
No, you're mixing him up with another person who strayed into Pakhtunistan or rather Khyber Pakhtunistan. You're mixing up two people with that story, but you claim that you have evidence that you've given in a dossier.
I'm not mixing up. This is the story.
Sir, you claim you have evidence that you've given in a dossier, but that's contradicted by three facts. One, in December 2016, Sartaj Aziz told your old Senate that you only had press statements to go by. The evidence was insufficient. Secondly, in January this year, you formally asked the Indians for detail and evidence about the people you were looking into connected to this story, except that you then proceeded to link the availability of that evidence from the Indian side with consular access. And finally, 3 hours after the death sentence, your Foreign Office once again contacted the Indian High Commissioner in Islamabad to reiterate your conditional consular access terms, which were basically, we'll give you access when you give us evidence and information. Now, you wouldn't be doing that if you actually had the evidence. Hence, I come back and say,
No, that
go ahead.
that is in response to request for consular access to the Indian mission. But as far as the evidence is concerned, you have the confessional statement, video recorded of the person. You know that he was using multiple identities. He was captured inside Pakistan. He has himself said that yes, he was captured.
Was he captured inside Pakistan, or was it, as Gunter Mulak says, he was kidnapped by the Taliban and sold to the ISI?
There are no Taliban in that area. There are no Taliban of any sort operative in that area. So Mr. Gunter Mulak is talking, is just dreaming and concocting stories, or has been led into believing some kind of a story. That is his prerogative. The fact of the matter is that there are no Taliban operating in that area who could have kidnapped him and who could have sold him to the ISI.
Let me bring you in on this,
It's all just a figment of somebody's fertile imagination.
Let me bring you in on this. Kamal Sibal, even though this is a story that echoes the government of India's position, says it would be clutching at straws, because it's the opinion of one man, and that man's no longer the serving ambassador. He's a retired ambassador, and who knows how influential he is. And Mr. Sibal is the foreign secretary. He may well be right. You also heard Aziz Ahmed Khan say that actually there are no Taliban in that area, and so how on earth could the Taliban have kidnapped this man? How credible a line is this for the Indians to take? It's come up in Indian papers, it's carried some conviction with Indian readers, but is it a credible line for us to use with the Germans and through the Germans with the European Union, or would it be really rather pointless?
Well, I think first there are two things on the surface. One is the Iranian statement, including by their ambassador in Pakistan. One is by this gentleman. Both have said that the Yadav has been abducted. And I think we need to contact them and get from them whatever.
Do you think we have?
I hope we have, because that should have been the first step.
But if we have, why are we silent about it?
Well, I don't know what wheels are working within the government, and
unless, of course, having contacted them, we've discovered that the reports were wrong and these guys are saying the opposite of what we want to hear.
So obviously then the government will take the best step possible. But on the other hand, they might have got confirmation, which would strengthen their case as and when
but then
they make an appeal.
Wouldn't that be made public to us, because it strengthens our case? And
well, they may make it public at the right time. So I think we have
when's the right time?
Well, once they start the process, once they start the appeal process.
One thing we have to realize is that time is of the essence in this entire episode. As per the statement yesterday, India only has a 60-day window period. We have to, the appeal says 40, the defense minister's statement says 60, as per the official press release. So we have to make each day count strategically, effectively. We cannot make any more fruitless representations or verbal condemnations. We have to move beyond that.
Very quickly before I take a break, there's one other element of international influence that we could use. Kamal Sibal, I want to put it to you. 2 days ago, the British Defense Secretary, Sir Michael Fallon, who, by the way, coincidentally happens to be in New Delhi today as we speak, accepted to the Hindustan Times that Britain needs to put more pressure on Pakistan to curb the terror we in India face. Given how much Britain wants post-Brexit a trade agreement, can we use the British to lean? Would that be of help to us?
Well, you know, these statements have not only come from Britain, these statements have come from United States of America. We've been signing joint statements with Malaysia, UAE, so many other countries which treat terrorism as an international issue and not a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. And that's the flaw in what your argument was, that if we approach these countries and ask them to curb Pakistani sponsorship of terrorism, we are contradicting our own position that we do not want external intervention in our bilateral affairs. This is not so. Even Arab countries are joining hands with us on this. So far as Michael Fallon and the statements are concerned, in itself this is all right. But Britain, we know, has silently also been pressing us to have a dialogue with Pakistan. So you can't take what they say at their face value. On this issue, they want to be on the right side. But at the same time, privately and otherwise, they do try and encourage us to have a dialogue with Pakistan in order to resolve the issues. So it's only to a limited extent that we should rely on such
you're
statements
suggesting,
as
Mr.
giving
Sibal,
us real openings
you're suggesting, Mr. Sibal, that
in terms of curbing terrorism from Pakistan.
It's not going to be worth our while to make a big effort to get major Western powers, major Western capitals to come in on our side on this. They're not going to do it unless it suits them, and they will only do it to the extent it suits them. We can't really rely on them.
Only if we take some solid steps ourselves and really cause concerns in the West that Pakistan's action is leading to heightened tensions with India, where Pakistan is wrong, where it has done something which is unacceptable. Then we have a strong hand to play.
What would that solid step
But
be?
if you go as a supplicant, then we will be
But what
met
would
with
that solid step be? We've already established that reducing missions, pulling out high commissioners is not at this stage the right thing to do. We know that in terms of trade, we export 70% more than we import, so we hit ourselves. What is the solid step you have in mind?
Doesn't matter. We're not going to look, Karan, we are not going to sell our self-respect for a couple of $1 billion. So what if we have an excess balance of trade with Pakistan? We can live without it.
No effect.
And all this LOC business should stop, especially in Jammu and Kashmir.
But if you stop trade where you make money, aren't you shooting yourself in the foot?
Not really, not really. Look at the, okay, if we get $2 billion from Pakistan, but look at it in terms of our total trade, it's nothing.
Okay.
We've just given $5 billion to Bangladesh.
Yes, but I mean the point I'm making is this, that Pakistan won't suffer.
We have given $3 billion to Afghanistan.
But sir, Pakistan won't suffer. We sell 2 billion, they sell 500 million.
They will suffer.
They can do without that. Is it really going to bring them to heel?
It's all right, let them do it without that, because there will be repercussions down the line. And if they go down this road, they will have more problems in Balochistan and CPEC and everything else. They have to worry about that.
All right, let me bring in Chandan Mehta. Chandan Mehta, before I take a break, there's one other area of international influence that we could consider, but I wonder whether it's wise of us to do, and that's the International Court of Justice. Do you believe it would be wise for India to go there, or would that be bringing in a level of internationalization that we would fundamentally be unhappy with?
Well, of course, it will internationalize the matter, and this is something we have resisted. And even recently, we reacted strongly to the suggestions emanating from Washington that the US might intervene or put sufficient pressure on India and Pakistan and bring about and mediate in the matter. Secondly, Karan, I am personally, well, I have no legal experience, but I wonder whether the International Court of Justice takes up individual issues. This is a case of an Indian citizen who we believe has been wrongly accused, abducted, and has been sentenced to death. But will the International Court of Justice take up one such individual's case? I thought it takes up cases only between two countries. We went to the International Court of Justice over the Rann of Kutch, over the rivers in Jammu and Kashmir, but I don't recall ever going to the ICJ over an individual matter. But I may stand corrected if this is not right.
You may well be right, and the International Court of Justice may determine that this is an issue to do with an individual, even if it's being contested by two countries, and therefore it can't really be considered a dispute between two countries. We're going to take a break at that point and then come back and ask, what about international public opinion? Can India work to save Kulbhushan Yadav by influencing the Western media, which is hugely powerful, by influencing organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, with whom, by the way, our relations are often stressful, and with whom, by the way, we've often objected to the role they play in our own country? But is that an avenue open to us? And then finally, is this something perhaps the Prime Minister should step in and consider handling himself, or would that be a mistake? Come back, you're watching To The Point. We are discussing the question, what steps can the Indian government take to save or help Kulbhushan Yadav? Chandra Mitra, beyond lobbying with major Western governments, which is what we discussed in part one, do you think India should use organizations like Amnesty International or Human Rights Watch, both of whom would have serious concerns with a prisoner being hanged? Or should we try and influence major international media like the New York Times, Washington Post, Financial Times, Guardian, BBC?
Well, we should certainly not approach the so-called human rights bodies, which we know play to various government agendas and have done a lot of damage in India and are ready to do damage again. It's just that the Modi government has been firm and has kept their damage potential low. So I think they are simply out. As far as influencing Western media, I think that's an ongoing process that the Ministry of External Affairs and our diplomatic missions abroad must continue to do. But I don't think that this alone will help the matter. We have to bring pressure on Pakistan and see how we can do it, and also without escalating the situation across the border, we must make it clear to Pakistan that this proxy business has to stop sometime, and now they are accelerating everything by again staging fake spy and planning to hang him. All this has to stop. The pressure has to be brought on Pakistan and by India. There is no substitute for that.
Mr. Ranade, coincidentally, or maybe it isn't such a coincidence, the announcement of the death penalty happened just a couple of days after an alleged Pakistan intelligence officer, a gentleman called Lieutenant Colonel Muhammad Habib Zahid, who's said to be an ISI agent, was lured, it's said by the Pakistani media, into Indian hands by RAW at Lumbini in Nepal, and now is in our custody. Could there be an exchange of spies? Is that perhaps the best way of sorting this out? We'll give back one of yours, you give back one of ours.
We've got many of this, but as far as this particular story is concerned, it's full of holes. It's based on the FIR that his son is alleged to have filed. I haven't seen it, but that's what they say. And the story is quite elaborate. I don't see a person being lured in a hurry. I mean, it takes time to lay the groundwork, if at all he was lured. Secondly, what was this gentleman doing in Lumbini? There are no business prospects for him in Lumbini.
But even
so
if that story is false, do we have other spies that are Pakistani who we can use to trade?
Yes, there are Pakistani spies of different grades, of different levels, who are here.
But we have one important enough to trade off against?
I'm sure there are spies here whom we can trade.
You understand the business of intelligence, you understand how much of it happens behind closed doors. Do you think this is the best route to save Yadav?
Well, I think it will be an expensive exchange if it does happen, because the Pakistanis have gone public with this gentleman. They have already
expensive means we'll have to give more than one.
We'll have to give more than maybe just a spy. We might have to give other things. That's what I think the Pakistanis want. They're bargaining, possibly for us to start talking to them on all subjects again.
Kamal Sibel, I want to ask you two related but separate questions. Give me short answers because time is of the essence. We're running out of time. First of all, is this an issue on which Mr. Modi, who can be supremely persuasive, should take a personal initiative? There was a stage when people thought he had a rapport with Nawaz Sharif. Should he personally step in, ring up Nawaz Sharif and make an appeal for the life of Kulbhushan Yadav? Or would that be a mistake because a Prime Minister appeal mustn't be seen to fail and there's a huge risk factor here?
Well, I will leave that question to the judgment of the Prime Minister. But my own view is that he should not. This is precisely what the Pakistanis would want to see happen, that we get so flustered and fluttered and our public opinion becomes so agitated that the government is constrained to reach out to Pakistan and then meet some of Pakistan's demands and then chart out a plan of resumption of dialogue and things like that. So I don't think that the Prime Minister should intervene at all in this matter, and we should deal with this matter at other levels and see how the situation develops. Then in phases take coercive steps against Pakistan.
Time is of the essence, so I need you to give me shorter answers. I want to ask you the second critical question, Mr. Sibel. There is a view yesterday expressed on this channel by your colleague and former Foreign Secretary Krishnan Srinivasan that the megaphone diplomacy that's occurring is the wrong way to handle it. We need more quiet diplomacy. And to be honest, A.S. Dullat, the former head of RNAW, said precisely the same thing. That these are issues that should be handled quietly by intelligence officials and diplomats rather than publicly through the media or through large, noisy debates in Parliament. Do you agree with that?
Look, it is all right. No, this is all right. I don't agree with that, not for the reason that it's not desirable, but it's not possible in our democracy. But this is a very sensitive public issue, and our press and other people will raise this, and government has to take notice of this. Otherwise, the government will come under pressure and they'll be seen to be insouciant and unconcerned about the fate of. It's become a very prominent public issue.
Okay.
So I think the nostrum that they are suggesting that we should engage in quiet diplomacy is not workable in our democracy.
You know, what you get from Kamal Sibal is a suggestion. He hasn't quite put it as strongly and as unequivocally as I'm about to put it to you, that actually, if we were a different society, where the media was more restrained, more thoughtful, more aware of the consequences of what it's doing, it might be easier to handle this thing. Is our system, our society, our media partly responsible for the fact that we may not end up handling this as well as we should and as well as we could? Is there too much media pressure through thoughtless debates that might push the government to do the wrong thing?
I think we, not only media, the society, we start hailing victory too often. Tomorrow, if a death sentence is transformed into a life sentence, will that be a victory? When Sarabjit passed away in Pakistan, it was labeled as a diplomatic failure by many people across the board. But the Congress party has full faith in the government. I think they're indulging in back channel talks and doing whatever possible to get Yadav back. And last point, we have to get him back as a matter of right and not some pity shown by Pakistan or some a favor being extended to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, because that will show a bad precedent.
If Pakistan gives him back to us, it will be undoubtedly as a favor they're doing to us. They are not going to accept he's come back by right, but let's leave that aside. That's now an issue of pride which shouldn't get in the way. Very quickly, I need a short answer. Is our media and the way we're conducting public debates becoming a bit of a problem? Is it pushing the government to resort to what Chris Srinivasan calls megaphone diplomacy rather than the subtler, quieter, behind closed doors diplomacy that both Srinivasan and Dulat felt would be more effective?
Well, it depends on what kind of case it is. In some cases, the media's intervention helps. In some cases, it doesn't. And in this case, it's Pakistan which has really brought this to the center stage.
So here in India, the media is not in fault at this moment on this case?
I don't think so.
All right, that's a very clear answer, and one that the media will be, I'm sure, grateful for. My thanks to both of you for coming to the studio. My thanks also to all my other guests for joining me, and in particular to Aziz Ahmed Khan, who unfortunately could only be with us for part one. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.